Hi, Jason Spangler, the SanteeSwapper, back with another unboxing. This one's kind of neat because I heard from this gentleman over a year ago. In fact, it was, I believe, the last day of 2024. He sent me a message and said that he had been an Eagle Scout and he had some stuff that he might want to send me. But then I didn't hear anything from him for a long, long time. And fast forward about 8 or 9 months later, he messages me and said that he himself is 90 years old and he's dealing with some family stuff, but he had been given some stuff from a family friend who had passed away, and the children didn't want the items and they just wanted to get him to a good home. And so he sent me some pictures and we made a deal for me to purchase the items, and he mailed them to me from California. That's where he lives. And so I want to unbox that collection for you today. It is some vintage stuff, some stuff that I love to get. It'll be really fun to go through it with you. All right, let's open the box and see what we've got. It's actually a pretty heavy box. Let's see, it was 8 pounds, almost 9 pounds of stuff. And so I'm kind of curious to see what in here is adding to the weight, because normally patches, just don't weigh that much. But we'll crack into it and take a look and see. Right off the top, we see this classic Philmont neckerchief. This one they made for so many years. I don't believe they have this exact same print anymore, although something similar to it if you go to Philmont today. But I have seen so many of these in collections. A lot of scouts that I hear from who have kept their stuff for a long, long time, I always say have three things in common. They were either an Eagle Scout, and or they went to a jamboree, and or they went to Philmont. And those lifelong memories oftentimes led people to hold on to their scouting memorabilia for a long, long time. Now, this is kind of interesting because this doesn't look nearly as old, but maybe I'm wrong. That is cool. That is definitely a more modern thing. It's just a picture frame, and it's a Philmont picture frame. Beautiful. I know who's going to get this. My daughter, who's been to Philmont now 3 times. I'm not sure what picture she'd want to put in that, but I will definitely give this to her the next time I see her. That is super, super cool. All right. Now that's a little oddball. That's a very, very modern patch snuck in here, which I bet goes to this guy right here. Um, I can't even. Oh, Sam Houston Area Council. Okay, and there's a little segment there. So, this looks like a 1950s era collection, but then you randomly get these little modern patches in here, which a lot of times what that tells me is that these patches belong to someone else in the family line and somehow got sort of tossed in here. So if you think about someone who did their scouting in the 50s, and this is a very, very modern patch, this wasn't his son. This was probably a grandson, is my guess, just based on how many generations are in between these two items. So again, part of this is just sort of it's not really forensic science, but like, figuring out like the different pieces that go with this. Now I noticed that this is a cool patch I want to show you. This is a NOAC patch from 1958, National Order of the Arrow Conference. And again, someone was really involved in scouting and went to a national OA conference, then it wouldn't necessarily surprise me that they would have some extra Order of the Arrow flaps that they traded for. Now this is kind of a dead ringer here. We can see that he has 4 of these flaps from Lodge 94, and they're all in really good shape. So that tells me this was his lodge. And so Lodge 94, that's kind of our starting point to know where this guy was from. And then these are most likely things he traded for. This one looks like it's been worn on a uniform. This is a very common national capital area. It's their first solid. Then this one right here, I believe, is a lodge from out in California, and this is Lodge 528. And then look how this works out. I'm in North Carolina, and then here's a Wahissa, which is Old Hickory Council. That's up in the mountains of North Carolina. That's a nice old flat from them. And then here's one from out in Denver. And then again, here's a date for us. So again, 2 patches here from Sam Houston Area Council that would help date the one we just saw. This is anniversary one, 1914 to 2014. So like a 10-year anniversary. And those are from whoever was the next guy. A couple more OA flaps. Here's a Bluegrass Council one from Kentucky, from Coweta. That's an old round Philmont Training Center patch. And then some other ones kind of from that generation, like here, this helps date it, Twin Lakes 1962. Here's an old camporee patch that's this woven made by the Apache Company. Most all of these that have this design and were made by the Apache Company, or from like 1959, 1960. They made a lot of patches in that time. Here's another one similar there. Here's another little North Carolina one that made its way out there. Here's one from a camp in Central Indiana Council. Again, this little woven was really a fad, and I date it to like 1959, 1960, maybe 61. I'm not sure what, maybe someone can tell us in the comments why that was so common, but I did see, or I have seen in other unboxings, order forms where you could order woven patches. So maybe it was just something that was really pushed and marketed, and people thought it was kind of unique and different, so they went ahead and signed up for those. Seen a bunch of these. I got a lot of these from collections. Then this is the classic Philmont patch from the 1950s. So this is the one before they had the sort of arrowhead shaped patch that many of us are familiar with. People call this the $quarter because it's about the size of a 50-cent piece, maybe a hair bigger. And then there were segments that went around this that you could earn while you're at Philmont. Then we have this armband here. This is Emergency Service Explorer. So when you were an explorer back in the day, that means you were a high school age scout during that time period. And then there were some requirements you could do to become part of this, where, potentially in your community, your town, if there was a need to have volunteers come out, you could wear this as someone who was trained, not trained, as an EMT or something, but, trained to help out. So again, more flaps here in this group. Lioni 92, Lodge 140. This one's from Texas. You can see this has been sewn, but I'm sure when you were trading patches in the 1950, you probably weren't that concerned about it. Johnny Appleseed Council, Luant Lodge. Another one here. Another one here. This one's been sewn as well. This Owassipee is Chicago. Seen a lot of those. But what I really like here is these ones that are cut edge. This is kind of telling you that this is more from that, again, late 50s, maybe early 60s period, where you'd have cut edge patches versus this style, which have a rolled, what we call marrowed edge all around them that sort of seals that off. It's funny, I've gotten a couple of these in recent collection pickups. This is from Ohio, I believe Cleveland, Ohio, Lodge 17, and then another one from that. And then here's another couple of flaps, Zikala Shah, that is also from Kentucky. And that's a good looking one there. We've got a few more down here. Here's one from out in California, Uyum Bully. And then seeing several of this Woa Pink. Now that's, again, that's a little unusual. If I pull all these three together, although I will say in general, this lodge is one that's kind of easy to get. These are more, they were easy traders, and you see a lot of these. But to see three of the same one, is a little interesting. But again, I think all of these are from Illinois, so that maybe helps paint the picture. Well, here's the Philmont arrowhead. Okay, so he's got two different Philmont arrowheads, and those are exactly the same. So this is interesting to me because, again, if we talk about breaking this down and sort of figuring out what the story is, to me, this is telling the story that two people went to Philmont together, probably a father and son, if I was to guess, and they both got the Philmont Arrowhead patch. This is the patch that you get, one per person when you get off the trail and you've done your trek at Philmont. And so to see two of them that are from the exact same generation, all the stitching is the same. They were earned, I think, the same time. This one, I can tell has actually been worn on a uniform just because the little pocket holder has been cut, and this one has not. So that is my guess that those two came together. A couple more here. Then I was also really pleased, and when I talk about recycling scouting memorabilia collections, to be able to get an Eagle Scout medal is always very cool to me. This is one of the sterling silver ones, I'm pretty sure. Although when you look at that ribbon, that is a really long ribbon. So I'll have to get out my reference book and double check that and just see what that is. A couple of other ones here. This is an Explorer canoe base, the Region 7 canoe base that eventually they changed the name. Somebody help me. What is this called later? It's escaping me now. But, after this is pre 1972, 73 when they had the changeover from the regions. And then I can't remember the name that it's called after that. Somebody in the comments can correct me and say, oh, SanteeSwapper, it's this. All right. Let's see what else we got. Three River Trail, Cairo, Illinois, which again, I mentioned this is an Illinois collection. So it's a nice little trail medal The scouts would earn these medals by going on trails. Sometimes you had to answer questions or do a short service project in order to qualify for that. I saw this in the pictures, and I'm pretty sure this is not a Boy Scout knife, but that doesn't surprise me. You probably would see kids from this time period would have different knives. And so this one, I don't know if there's a maker mark on it. It's really hard to make out because it's rusted with the plastic handle, but it's a nice little sheath there, and I'm sure that he enjoyed carrying that around. We got a little bit of green stuff there, so that tarnishing going on. All right, a couple of other patches hiding down in here. Bethlehem area, 1959 Camporee. Talking about dating, that's another one, 59. We have the NOAC patch from 58, so that's helping me pin all that in. All right, a uniform shirt is definitely going to give us an idea of where this guy was from, maybe even the troop, the council, kind of the whole story. So let's break this out. All right, perfect, perfect, perfect. All right. So it is the community strip here is Wood River, Illinois, and we see the patches on here, the Pisa Trail, and then we have this is a felt NRA marksman patch. You would get that at summer camp if you qualified. And then this patch here for 1951, I really don't know what that is. The fact that it kind of has a bar through it makes me think maybe it's some sort of junior leader training kind of thing. And then this was something specific to their council. Again, you see that Pisa bird, which is a whole legend about that. And so this activities award with these little segments. So I really think somebody from that area would like to get this shirt because to get it all complete with this really early community strip would be kind of cool. Let's just see what's on this arm. It's got a few merit badges here. Back in the day, it wasn't very common, honestly, from what I see in collections, that people sewed merit badges on their sleeve. But you do see this; it was allowed in the uniform insignia guide. You could sew merit badges on a sleeve, and that's what he did. And this guy was a scribe and a member of what I think is the Eagle Patrol. So put that to the side. I'm going to slide the patches over just so we can pull out some of these other items here and see what else we got in this collection. Okay, let me set this rest of this to the side. All right, Norman Rockwell's Boy Scouts. Let's see what we got here. Issued in conjunction with the 75th anniversary of the Boy Scouts. Nice, very nice. And then these are stamps that have been canceled. And this one's dated 1982. So, again, if we start thinking about what are the different generations we've seen, if you were a scout in the 1980s, you definitely could have been someone who your dad would have done scouting in the late 1950s. So that would match up pretty good. So this might have been something that he bought for his son as just kind of like a little, thing from the scout catalog. But this is, pretty interesting. I really don't recognize this. It's not something I've seen very much of, but I'm sure that this was something sold by the Boy Scouts in the catalog. It's just that that kind of thing that they would do. And then there's another kind of somewhat similar item here, Norman Rockwell Tribute to Youth of America. And then what do you know? Here's a couple of Philmont decals that just slid on out. And then this is more, it's what we call these sort of first day covers. And someone has put these into a collection here, official first day covers. These have been stamped, looks like in Liberia, which, yeah, that is pretty cool. Okay. I am not much of a person that's really into um, stamps and first day covers, but this one does have a letter. And so, yeah, this doesn't surprise me. Calhoun's Collectors Society, and I think this address here is in Minneapolis, Minnesota. So it wouldn't surprise me if this was kind of like something put together by this collector society and then sold to their members. And sure enough, what do you know? Here's the pamphlet for it. Official first day covers and matching government stamps, 1981. So this was something he could have paid for. And let's just see, y'all, if it tells us how much this cost in 1981. See if the price is on it. I would think so. This feels like it would be. Okay. Looks like you got each one for $4.75. So I'm not sure if you got them piece by piece by piece or it came as a whole set. And this one says the special world of first day cover collecting. So someone who's definitely kind of a stamp person. So, anyways, well, that's a fun collection. I am not a stamp person. That my dad was never into it. Nobody that I knew was really into it. Again, they did a really good job though, with all the paperwork and stuff. But kind of reminds me a little bit of coins when coin companies do these kind of reprints, they'll kind of really dress it up. Now, that was something that my wife's grandfather was into, these collecting these coins from these like, and that wasn't like Franklin Mint, but something similar where they were sort of like, supposed to be rare, but really they were just printing them up. So, anyways, well, I hope you enjoyed looking at this collection. Looks like to me we had the guy, then we had his son was involved. Maybe they went together to Philmont in the late, maybe around that 1980, 81 time period. And then maybe there was a grandkid that did a smidge in the Sam Houston Area Council. Who knows? I don't know. But Jason Spangler with the SanteeSwapper. This is what I do. I help recycle scouting memorabilia by buying collections from families, whether it's somebody in this case who's passed away and their family didn't have any interest in it, or maybe from the actual scout who collected these items, went to Philmont, went to a jamboree, went to a NOAC, in this case in the 1950s, and traded just like I did when I was going to these events. Traded and in my case, just never gave up the patch bug and always was interested in collecting scouting memorabilia. So if you have a collection like that, go to my website, scoutpatchcollectors.com. I would love to connect with you, talk to you on the phone. You can text me, email me, and we can talk about your scouting story and see if I can help you. Thanks very much.